There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean Breeze Books. Welcome back to my channel and another Friday Reads. And I have not only a book haul at the end of the video, but a birthday gift haul at the beginning. So let's get started, including this shirt. This shirt was a kind of a joke gift that I absolutely love from my sister. I'm too sexy for my hair, that's why it isn't there. If you weren't here last week, I turned 60 last Saturday, January 24th. Oh my God. And so there was stuff on all weekend. And setting the gifts aside for a minute, it was just lovely fellowship, togetherness, family dinner on Saturday night at the same hotel where Kenji and I had our wedding party. And here's some pictures from that. I don't take good pictures, really. I have you should see me trying to find something to screenshot for my videos for the thumbnail, because oh my God, I just look horrible in almost every screenshot. But anyway, these pictures were quite nice, so here they are. And a couple of family friends there as well, so that was 12 people. And then a small party at my house on Sunday afternoon, and that included Sharon Batalla, David Carpenter and his wife Honor, and my mom, and my dear friend Gwen and her partner, and my dear friend Kathy, who used to be my English prof, and Kenji and I. Am I missing anybody? Nope. So that was a lovely, almost like a literary salon, and I just soaked in it. I just loved every minute of that. And I got a ton of cash from people and bookstore coupons, including some people who follow me here. So very grateful for that. Thank you very much. Sharon Batalla got me a very thoughtful and incredibly unique gift that I would have never thought of getting for myself. But because she has gotten it for me, I think it could change my life in the coming years. She got me a 1-year subscription to the Criterion channel, an arty movie channel, lots of foreign films, lots of older films, but lots of art house films. Films that are considered by the elite to be films rather than movies and have some aesthetic value or something. Those of you who know me well know that I don't watch movies. I watch maybe one a year, if that. This is going to be so great for me. I hope I avail myself of the opportunity to watch at least one movie a week. And I'm thinking Fridays, because I usually have my Friday reads finished by early Friday morning. And the rest of the day is kind of a day of rest. It's kind of like my Sunday. And I'm going to watch a movie tomorrow. And I think I'm going to start a film journal too. I saw somebody on Twitter talking about that. And I thought, oh yeah, that's what I should do. It's a gap in my artsy-fartsy experience that I'm going to go a fair ways into filling in the coming year. So that was wonderful. All right, I'll show you what Kenji got me. He picked these out himself at the bookstore. He got me a book gift card from McNally's, the bookstore. But I also picked these out, and these are just gorgeous. This is a pencil box, or what do you call it? A container, and look at it. It's not plastic. It's tin covered in enamel. It's really lovely. I just love it. And then I'm not quite sure what I'm going to use this for, but it doesn't matter. I just adore it. It's from the same company, so the same material. The company is Boomytown, all one word. Boomytown in England. This tray. Mom said maybe you'll use it for bookmarks. Maybe I will, but anyway, it's just gorgeous. And again, that tinny feeling covered with enamel. So well done, Kenji. Sheila and Colleen are the daughters of that lovely friend Joe who died a few months ago. She was 94, who I had been getting large print library books for. And that family and our family were the closest knit neighbors of all time. We just all grew up together, celebrated Christmas, spent Christmas Eve together every year, and went camping up north every year. Just very close. So we invited them, Sheila and Colleen, who are now, they're a little bit older than me. Sheila's a year older than me. Colleen's maybe 3 years older than me. And so between the two of them, they gave me 3 beautiful gifts. They didn't know what to get me, and Suzanne knew that I had started journaling again. So they got me 2 gorgeous journals. And this is one, leather bound, with I don't know what this, I haven't quite figured out what this dangly thing is. Is it supposed to be a bookmark maybe? But it's interesting. And pages inside, obviously. And this one I haven't taken out of the plastic yet, but it's another hardbound, gorgeous journal that has a combination lock on it. So I don't have to worry too much about privacy. Kenji can't read script writing. Most Asian second language speakers can't read script. Actually, what am I talking about? I don't write in script. I have lost the ability to write in script. So I print, but he wouldn't be able to read my messy printing either. So privacy is not an issue. And they also gave me a fidget pen. Does anybody know? I haven't had time since last weekend to research this, but this is what you get inside. So there's a nice purple pen, which is going to match my glasses on the right, or on your right, I don't know, on the side. I don't know if you're going to be your right or left. And then these fidget balls. I don't know what, they're just for a stress release, but the pen itself is gorgeous. So I'm going to look into that in the coming days. And a day or two before my birthday, a lovely parcel came in the mail from Mary Jean, my cousin, and one of my very best friends, who I read to nightly, as well as reading nightly a different book to Mum. I knew part of what was going to be in the package. But first, I'll show you the part that I didn't know was coming, that I also love, and this is another Indigenous-themed blank book, so another journal. It's just beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. It's her mother, that my grandfather and her mother were sister and brother, but it's on her father's side. I think her father's mother had this book. And she said, would you like me to send it to you? I said, oh my God, yes, please. This is an antique royal book. Queen Alexandra's Christmas gift book with photos. And it is from 1915 or something. No, earlier, because Queen Alexandra was only queen from 1901 to 1910. Yeah, 1908. And this has been in Mary Jean's family, not the side that I'm related to her on, but the other side. So it's full of photographs, and for a book that was published well over 120 years ago or whatever, the quality of the photographs is to die for. So these are all, there she is, the old girl, and these are her own photographs that she took. And I can't believe how great the reproductions are. And so they're of relatives and friends, and she was Danish originally, so visiting back to her family in Denmark and all over Europe. And I just can't believe the quality of the photos. So what a treasure. Absolute treasure. And I think the last gift, other than a whole bunch of cash, oh my God, was my dear friend Gwen. She knows that I love pottery. She also knows that I like pottery that's irregular shaped. And she got me this gorgeous bowl that she says I can use in the oven or whatever I want to use it for. Look at it. It's just gorgeous. And look at that irregular shape. That really floats my boat. So quite the birthday haul, I must say. All right. So that's my personal news. And my health is back. Everything's back. It feels like the 2026 has started this week. And so I managed to finally get a video edited and posted that I really intended to get posted in November or something, but just, I don't know why. But anyway, it's just, is it because I'm getting old? I remember I used to put up 3 or 4 videos a week just 4 or 5 years ago. No problem. Was it because I wasn't as fussy of an editor? I don't think so. I've always been probably too fussy of an editor. But anyway, I finally got part 2 of the novellas project with Barb Howard. That video, that hour-long video, edited and posted and put it up yesterday, and it turned out really great. So we read, I think, 6 novels together. She chose 3 and I chose 3, and this year, unlike other years, we hadn't read our own, the ones we assigned to the other, we hadn't actually read them, or very many of them, so it was a bigger reading project. But anyway, so you can check that video out, and I look forward to continuing it and hopefully being a little bit more on time in 2026.
Editing Sean here. Well, this video has audio drift quite noticeably from this point on, and I have done all the usual fixes. I have wasted 2 hours trying to fix the audio drift. Nothing is working, so you're just going to have to put up with it, and I'm very sorry about that.
I've had a fantastic reading week. I finished 2 books, both of which were awesome, and I started another one that's starting out awesome. And I'll be starting a couple in the coming week. So let's get into it. So the first one I finished was a book that I read to Mary Jean, another novel by Saskatoon writer David Carpenter called The Gold. His longest book, I think, 350 pages. And it was published in 2017. So it's also fiction that's the most recent of any that I've read, and it really shows. This is a really great novel. I loved it. It's a mature novel. He's 82, I think, now. So this was written 9 years ago when he was in his 70s. And it's just so much more layered than the other fiction that I've read, all of which I enjoyed to varying degrees. But this was a very fine novel. And I'm looking forward to interviewing David about it in a couple of weeks and getting it to you in a year or two. I interviewed David Carpenter about each book once I finished, and then it goes into a pipeline of videos. But I don't put up more than about 2 a year because I got so many other videos I want to get out to you. This starts in England, and the protagonist is born in England, and his childhood was fascinating. I've forgotten which part of England already, but I think Yorkshire. I think so. And then he comes to Canada. He gets an interest in prospecting for gold. So the middle half of the novel is really about him up in northern Canada prospecting for gold. And what happens there? It's an adventure story. A lot of tragedy and violence befalls him that he manages to survive, and then he comes back down to Edmonton where he had lived for maybe a year or two before he'd gone up north, and his life settles down to a certain degree, with all kinds of things weighing on his conscience about what had happened up there and whether he'd made the best choices. But with a room full of gold bricks to his name. Yeah, there was a complexity to the storytelling and a wealth of really well-developed characters, more characters and more plot, really, and more layers than what I'd read previously. Probably this is my favorite of his novels. I really loved the murder mystery he wrote, which is the last work of fiction I read, and it wasn't too much earlier than this. If you like adventure stories that are set back in history in Canada especially, I think you'd enjoy this. There is actually a political theme about the indigenous peoples up north and the way that they were being poisoned by some of the mining practices that was also really fascinating and I knew nothing about, and I'm looking forward to talking more with Dave about that was part of the story here. And the one I finished earlier today was the first novel that I did for Ben's Read Good challenge, or whatever he calls that challenge. The prompt for January was book with a food word in the title, and I chose Angels on Toast by Don Powell, an American novel published in 1940. And I loved this. And I want to read all of her other books sooner rather than later. What an incredible writer. I don't think I'd ever really heard of her, or certainly maybe just knew her name. She's not as famous as she should be on the basis of this novel. She died in the 60s, and she was almost 70. And this is set in New York, mostly in New York, some in Chicago. And it's about a pair of best friends who are businessmen, and they reminded me of men from Mad Men, although it's not about an advertising agency. But the vibe and the characters and the behavior, the heavy drinking and womanizing of these two married men that were cheating on their wives left, right, and center, and had mistresses with whom they were emotionally involved, as well as all kinds of one-night stands. But they loved their wives in their own way, or at least one of them did. But their friendship was based on covering for each other and helping each other when they got into a scrape with their wife and giving an alibi or this or that kind of thing. But they were also in business together to a certain degree. And it opens on the train. And the way that she builds character, within about 10 pages, the characters of the two men, Jay and Lou, they just jump off the page. It was hard for me to distinguish between them, even though personalities were a bit different, but their behavior was almost the same, so it's really hard. Okay, which one is the one that, was with this one? And there'd be some swapping of partners that they didn't tell each other about. I did look up the 1940 New York Times review, where the reviewer said that the jacket copy, the little blurb on the dust jacket, it got the characters mixed up in the way it summarized the plot, so I don't feel so bad. But that didn't matter. I don't think that was a flaw. You can tell it's written by a woman because the women really jump off the page as well, but boy do the men jump off and we can't help but smile or chortle at their antics, as well as realizing that they're just destroying their wives in so many ways. Their betrayal, and not only their wives, their mistresses, and the lies and the crazy drinking and all that. She made me know these men and feel my way into why they were the way they were. without making excuses for anything. It was also very funny in places, and I loved the writing so much. There's one short passage I'll read to you. It's not a spoiler at all. This is in the voice of one of the mistresses. Ebby, it's not first person, but that's who is being talked about. She's the mistress of Lou. She'd just have to sit home waiting to hear his confessions and forgive him. That was the trap she had been begging for. That was all everybody fought for, worked for, demanded as their right. Traps. There was Lou Donovan, getting along fine, free, arrogant, sitting pretty, when he notices he has no trap, so he hunts around for a super-duper trap, little Trina Camere. And here was she, Ebby, smart girl, for 10 years, chasing after a man who was pure poison to her career, to any career, made her business success seem silly because he was all she wanted, made this whim of hers for a farm a permanent cage for herself because it suddenly struck him just right. Talk about learning through your own mistakes. All you ever learned was, this thing I'm after, this thing I'm going to do is a mistake, and I'll always regret it, but that isn't going to stop me now. That was the value of experience. And that kind of gets to the heart of the relationships and betrayals and the psychological dynamics at play between these characters. It also reminded me of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? There wasn't many shouting matches in here, a few, but certainly the vibe of just these really deeply dysfunctional, alcohol-laden machinations and deceptions, but in capturing the humanity of the characters underneath all that, it was something quite profound. I loved it. And I have started one that I want to check in prematurely or in a preliminary way, and that's the novel I just started reading to Mary Jean a couple nights ago. And this is the British novel that I've been wanting to get to. My reading life is so planned out in advance with buddy reads and so on that to fit in a book that I'm not buddy reading is almost impossible. Unless I'm doing it on audio or something, then that's where I get more spontaneity. It's, okay, I finished that audiobook, what am I going to do next? To the degree that my reading life is spontaneous, it's because of my audiobooking. But this one, there is no audio for this, and that's why it's taken me so long to fit it in, even though I've just been so drawn to it since before I bought it. It's called The Way the Day Breaks by David Roberts, a debut novel published in 2023 by Weatherglass Books. And this book is written, so far at least, completely in dialogue with no quotation marks. It's just what one character says and what another character says. Now, it may change, because the first chapter, which I haven't finished, I'm still on chapter 1 and I'm on page 19, is a car trip with the family on the way home from a summer vacation. So maybe the narrative style will change. Who knows? So it's a bit of a challenge to read out loud. I'm reading it to Mary Jean, and what I decided early on is I love to give my characters voices, but if the book is all in dialogue with no expository prose of any kind, my voice would give out. Like I couldn't, because certain characters, I give them a cranky older lady who will be like, rah, 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 rah. And some characters have deeper voices and stuff. That's hard on my throat, doing it all the time. And Mary Jean says she has no trouble following it. Just listening, she can tell. And I can tell too. Sometimes I have to read a sentence ahead or peek ahead to make sure, okay, what's going on here, who's speaking. But it's set in Yorkshire in the late 80s, and the father, it says on the back, is going to descend deep into mental illness. So I don't know how mentally ill he is now, but the idea he's got in his head is they're on the last hour's drive back home after wherever they went, I think over to Europe, France maybe, for their summer vacation. He wants to create a new religion so that the family can get the tax breaks from a new religion. And then he thinks, and we could also make up a theology, and that would be good for us to do too. And his long-suffering wife is just shaking her head. What she's doing with her head is not described in the book, but just from what she says, oh, for God's sakes, just get off it. What are you talking about? And he's got 3 kids in the back. I think there's 3 kids, and they're various ages. Maybe the youngest is about 8, and then up to maybe 14. And they're teasing him. He wants to make an altar in the backyard or something. It's humorous, but I don't think that's the predominant tone. There's something very serious about it, because I know that things are going to go off the rails for this man. But he's a dreamer, and it's talking nonsense. And how does this family, who I guess love him, I think it feels like they love him, but they just kind of shake their head at all these crazy ideas he comes up with, is my feeling so far. It's really gripping, and it's really working. It doesn't read like a play. It's not set up on the page like a play. But it is just dialogue back and forth so far, and I'm quite intrigued. All right, so I'm going to be starting 3 books. I said 2 at the beginning, but I have committed because I'm always asking for extensions with my Patreon buddy readers because I'm always behind. And I promised Melanie this time, no extensions. I'll be ready to talk to you. We're going to talk on March 8th, so that means I better get started. She's interested in royal stuff like I am, so we're going to read a book I just recently hauled, Serving Victoria, Life in the Royal Household, by Kate Hubbard. And it is just about what it says it is, and I'm looking forward to diving in. I am obsessed with everything to do with Queen Victoria, and so this is going to be fun, and as I'm sure my chat with Melanie will be as well. And I'm almost finished the book I'm reading to Mum, and I'm just loving it. I'm not going to mention it here. I'm going to be raving about it next week. And so I think the next one we're going to try is another Furled Middlebrow book from Dean Street Press, Rhododendron Pie by Margery Sharp. I read a book by Margery Sharp years ago called The Nutmeg Tree, and I really liked it. It was fun and sexy and feminist for whatever year it was published, 1937. And then I started to read another one to Mum just a few months ago that's a Furled Middlebrow reprint, The Foolish Gentlewoman, and it started out really in a clunky way. And the connection between the characters, it was hard to grab hold of what this was going to be, or it just didn't grab Mom. It didn't grab me either. I probably would have continued a little bit longer, but Mom just said, I really don't like this. So set it aside. My friend Leah is really into Furled Middlebrow, and she has a book club on Litzy, and they do about 6 a year or something like that. And the first one, the January one, it's almost the end of January, is Rhododendron Pie. So that's why I acquired it, and I sent it home with Mom, and I said, read 10 pages or so, or a chapter or 2. And she did think it might be better than the last one, so we'll give it a try. It's a Sussex family with 3 kids. I don't want to know anything else than that, but I'll be starting that. And I'm ready to start my February book for the Ben Reads Good Book Challenge, which is something by an Australian author. So I picked something really short that I knew that it would be years before I'd ever get to it if I didn't pick it off the shelf and do it for this challenge. And that is a short novel that I think I paid maybe $50 or $60 to buy it from the Australian publisher and have it shipped to Canada a couple of years ago. And now I think it's probably widely available in North America, but at the time you could only get it that way, and still haven't read it. It's called The Sitter by Angela O'Keeffe, and note the double F in O'Keeffe. So I'm not even 100% sure that's how it's pronounced. I'll find out. I'm not sure where she lives now, but she was she grew up on a farm in Queensland. And this novel came out in 2023, and it is set in Paris, although I know that it does go back to Australia for parts of the story. And it's in the early days of the pandemic. So the writer, can't leave her hotel room. And she's trying to finish a novel about Cézanne's wife, Hortense. And that's the novel. So I don't think it's going to be particularly an Australian novel, although I did do enough research to know that she does go back to Australia, so part of the story, but it's about this artist's wife. And it sounds absolutely fascinating. I heard glowing reviews of it when it came out, which is why I bought it. Okay, so now it's time for my book haul. This one is absolutely fascinating. This is set the story happens in 1998 on the border between West and East Timor. A bunch of men are gathered at the police station to watch the World Cup, and that's the premise, and I don't need to know another thing. People from Oetimu by Felix Nesi is an author from West Timor, born in 1988. If you didn't already know from the shape, this is published by Archipelago Books in 2025. Oetimu 1998 is the heading, and here's the first paragraph. 1 hour before the murderers raided Martin Kabidi's house on the night of the World Cup finals, Sergeant Ippy drove by on his motorbike. It was an RX King model, its muffler modified so that wherever he went, the bike's deafening roar would split the wooden walls of poor people's houses, incite a chorus of dog barks, and cause bats to scatter from nearby treetops. When he stopped to pick up Martin Kabidi, the bike's headlights gleamed in the chilly film of mist held between the banana leaves. A few scrappy dogs started chasing the 2 men as they sped off. One nearly snagged Sergeant Ippy's leg, but the driver kept revving the engine as though he were trying to goad them on. Sergeant Ippy was happy. He had set up everything for a party in the little police station where he lived, complete with a spread of spiced dog meat and roast pork, deer jerky, and a lot of booze, including some taxed, labeled bottles he brought back from the city, and soapy capella, locally brewed. I'm pretty intrigued to see what this is all about eventually. Next is a 1954 British novel by a woman. I've never read her, and this is going to be a buddy read with a real friend to this channel and Patreon supporter, Robin, The Tortoise and the Hare by Elizabeth Jenkins. The distinguished barrister's wife faces a crisis because the next-door neighbor is trying to steal her husband away. Opening paragraph. The sunlight of late September filled the pale, formal streets between Portland Place and Manchester Square. The sky was a burning blue, yet the still air was chill. A gold chestnut fan sailed down from some unseen tree and tinkled on the pavement. In the small antique dealers, a strong shaft of sunlight, cloudy with whirling gold dust, penetrated the collection of red lacquer and tortoiseshell, ormolu and morocco. Imogen Gresham held a mug in her bare hands. It was a pure sky blue, decorated with a pattern of raised wheat ears, and of the kind known in country districts as a harvester. Her eye absorbed the color, and her fingers the molding of the wheat. Her husband, however, saw that there was a chip at the base of the mug, from which cracks meandered up the inside, like rivers on a map. And the next is a Canadian short story collection, Marine Life by Linda Svensson. When was it published? 1992, so that's a long time ago. I owned this book in this edition, maybe 10, 15 years, got rid of it without ever getting to read it. Those of you who've been following the Alice Munro controversy since that story broke, what was it, a year and a half ago or something? Oh, I didn't even notice this. There's a blurb on the back from Alice Munro. So that's why she read it. She was asked to blurb the book. I just happened to notice it right now. Here's her blurb. Linda Svensson's stories are stunning, so easily embodying such terrific power. The last story left me shaking. So, the revelation shortly after Alice Munro's death, at the age of 94, her children came forward that one of the daughters had been sexually abused when she was 9 years old by her stepfather, Alice Munro's second husband, and that it was kept from Alice at the time, but Andrea, the youngest daughter, had suffered this abuse and it was covered up and Alice was not told of it. Years later, I believe about 15 years later, her daughter Andrea was over at her house visiting. Alice was so profoundly affected by the last story in this book that is about the tragedy of a girl being abused by her stepfather. And there was something about the way the mother reacted that troubled Alice, and she said, how could a mother do that to a child? Like maybe stick up for the stepdad or something. And that brief exchange is what prompted Andrea to finally tell her mother in a letter a week or so later. And Alice reacted more the way this mother of the story did. They became estranged. And after a brief separation with her second husband, Fremlin, she did get back with him and she defended him from all the accusations until he died, and then she died from Alzheimer's, but it was never processed, never dealt with. So a horrible thing that the daughter went through. So I was curious about this, so I got another copy of it to read the story in question. All of the stories, of course, but in particular the last story. And the last story is called White Shoulders. And I'll read the first 2 paragraphs to give you more of a sense of it. My oldest sister's name is Irene DeHaan, and she has never hurt anybody. She lives with cancer, in remission, and she has stayed married to the same undemonstrative Belgian Canadian, a brake specialist, going on 30 years. In the family's crumbling domestic empire, Irene and Peter's union has been, quietly, and despite tragedy, what our mother calls the lone success. Back in the late summer of 1984, before Irene was admitted into hospital for removal of her left breast, I flew home from New York to Vancouver to be with her. We hadn't seen each other for 4 years, and since I didn't start teaching ESL night classes until mid-September, I was free, at loose ends, unlike the rest of her family. Over the past months, Peter had used up vacation and personal days, shuttling her to numerous tests, but finally had to get back to work. He still had a mortgage. Their only child, Jill, who just turned 17, was entering her last year of high school. Until junior high, she'd been one of those unnaturally well-rounded kids, taking classes in the high dive, water ballet, drawing, and drama, and boy hunting in the mall on Saturdays with a posse of dizzy friends. Then, Irene said, overnight she became unathletic, withdrawn, and bookish. An academic drone. At any rate, for Jill and Peter's sake, Irene didn't intend to allow her illness to interfere with their life. She wanted everything to proceed as normally as possible. As who wouldn't? And the last one is a novel that won the Canadian Governor General's Award last year, Small Ceremonies by Kyle Edwards. This was part of a library book vlog I did. Put a link to that in the show notes. Kyle Edwards is an Anishinaabe journalist and writer from Lake Manitoba First Nation. And he is a professor at the University of Southern California. And this is set in Winnipeg about Indigenous kids that are hockey players. And I read the first 10 pages of the first chapter, and I really liked it, and I'm not interested in hockey. Heated rivalry, there's a topic I haven't discussed on my channel. First 2 paragraphs. It starts with a rumble, a heartbeat, a powwow on a gym floor. All echo and thunder, a storm before the lightning, coming not from the sky, but from the ice, rising above the glass and mesh meant for foul pucks and empty cans and trash and wrappers, the revenants of lost souls. Foot stomps and air horns. It's the sound of a beginning, a new longing, a new hockey season. There's excitement in the air. It's growing, raising hearts and neck hair, and a residue of sadness. It starts before the players leave the dressing room, with the music turned up deafeningly high, all 80s rock and guitar solos, by a boy DJ not yet old enough to be in high school, operating from a stereo system in the box beside the scorekeeper. There are fans, but only a few, mostly parents and friends and fellow students and girlfriends in jerseys with their boyfriend's name and number on the back in thick font, climbing aboard paint-chipped bleachers in what looks like single file, mining the seats for a place along the cracked wood and wobbly planks. I think I'm going to get to that one on audio fairly soon. That's kind of the loosey-goosey plan I have in my head. All right, that is my book haul. Oh, my God. Thanks for watching.